Fred Johnson, my man, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you, Stu.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to have you here, and I'm excited you're safe, your family's safe. We were just talking about, obviously the hurricanes and all that going on. You're from New Orleans, so definitely glad that you're here with us, man. Glad you're safe. And so I thought as we kick this thing off, if you want to give the audience just a little bit of a look into like what was life like for little Fred as you were growing up.
Thank you, man. Again, I appreciate being on the podcast. You start off with a good one. So little Fred. Well, first I'm a triplet. So I'm a fraternal triplet.
That's crazy.
Me and two girls. My sisters are Amani and Sasha, and I have a little sister. She's 6 years younger than me. So growing up, having two sisters that are the same age, got to pretty much experience everything together. You always have somebody to talk to about things. And so my parents were really, and still are, but really into education. Like that was the thing that they just drilled. I mean, my dad at one point, he would pay us for like A's and B's, right? Every A we got $5, every B we got $3. And at some point he had to stop because we just kept coming home with A's and B's. So growing up, I definitely, education was a top priority. And early on, I really enjoyed science. And so our parents would kind of put us into different science things, and I joined science clubs and different things like that. But really started to gravitate toward medicine and pre-med. Nice. But yeah, growing up, just it was fun. Also, just on a flip side of that, part of it was tough because everything was ×3. Right. And so my parents were paying for us to go to a private school at the time. And so there were definitely some things that we couldn't afford to do. So dress down days, field trips. And there were definitely some moments there where you're seeing everybody around you get to experience, fun things. And then you almost have this expectation like, OK, we know we're not going to get to do those things. So
right.
On the flip side, yes, it was had a lot of fun with my sisters, and you always had somebody to talk to. And on the flip side, just didn't have a lot of chances to do things that some kids got a chance to do. So it's a little peek into it.
Love it, man. And it's interesting too to hear you say that, like, because my parents, I don't remember if they would pay me for A's, but like we had like inside a cupboard, if you had an A, you would like write where you got an A, and like. Maybe they would pay us. I don't remember or it was like maybe if you got 3 A's, you got to go to a movie. It was like something where it was very similar. It was like you were rewarded for this, so you wanted to do more of it. And I think it's kind of crazy that as we grow up, like we could incorporate some of those things in our life to reinforce better behavior in our life or create better habits. But we almost don't look at it that way. Versus if you had a kid, you're like, well, obviously I'm going to pay them for A's because I want them to be smart and I want them to go in that. But then as we get older, we kind of phase out of this way of like rewarding ourselves for doing the things that we really want to do with our life. It's kind of interesting. So walk me through then. So education's a big thing. There's 3 of you. You're not able to fully do everything that you want. And eventually as you start to go through, the different levels of school, right? You go to elementary, high school, college, all those sort of things. Did you kind of have an idea as you went through these of like what you wanted to do? I know you said medicine was like a big emphasis. Was that always the goal? Like, I'm going to go be a doctor and I'm going to like, was that the vision?
It changed so much. So if I'm starting from elementary school, I really wanted to be a scientist. I really liked Bill Nye the Science Guy. I liked science shows. I like watching PBS. So I was like, you know what? I want to be a scientist. And then as time went on, I got more into sports. Kobe Bryant was my favorite and still is my favorite athlete. And so there was one point where I was like, I want to go to the NBA. And then I wasn't good and I stopped growing. So that dream ended pretty quick. And so it then shifted from trying to become a professional athlete to saying, you know, if I can't make it to the league as a professional athlete, I'll try to be an athletic trainer. And then I kind of, again, that stuck for a little while. And then I said, no, you know what, that's pretty hard too. And so that eventually evolved into me wanting to be a pediatrician. And the way I came to that conclusion was, you know what, I like working with kids, pretty good at biology, decent at chemistry, and I want to make a lot of money. So what combines kids, science, and
Yeah.
making a lot of money? Pediatrics. And
Nice.
I was a pre-med biology major. It took me a while to graduate college. So for my first 3 years of college, I was pre-med, and then struggled a lot with college biology, struggled a lot with
Hmm.
chemistry, and kind of had to have a meeting with myself. And my sister, the year prior, Sasha, she changed her major to psychology. And so that gave me the confidence to say, you know what? I know we were supposed to have this triplet doctor thing going. That was like our dream.
Yeah.
That was what we were trying to do. And I said, you know what? That's just not it. I have to find what brings me joy.
Yeah. She like
Where
opened
do I
up the
want?
gates for you. She like gave
Right.
you, and I, not to stop you there, but I think
Go
it's
ahead.
such a powerful lesson for so many people is we get stuck in this route of like, well, I have to do this or I got to do this. We get so invested to it. We're like, I just, I'm too deep into it. Right. And we get into this phase of, and then also on top of it's like, well, my parents think I'm supposed to do this. And there's this triplet thing. And like,
Right.
we get so sucked into this thing of like, this is the way that it's supposed to be rather than like what you're starting to say next when the real powerful question is like, well, what actually brings me joy? And I think that's just, I mean, for anybody listening to that's feeling like they're stuck in the route of like I've gone too far, just knowing like take a breath, step back. You probably have decades and decades of life left.
Right.
That if there's ever a time to change it, now might be the good time. So continue. So you realize the gates are open. You can change.
Right. And you were right. My parents, and again, they really touted education. They held it to a really high standard, and they were part of helping to build my identity as someone who could see themselves becoming a doctor one day. And I do thank them for that. But that really didn't
Yeah.
align with my purpose and how I wanted to impact people. So I really had to think, what were things that brought me joy and what was the type of impact I wanted to have. And I thought back to my high school experience, and I did a lot of volunteer work with elementary school kids in high school. And I really liked helping my sister with math. I liked tutoring and helping her with things. So I said, well, what allows me to kind of be around kids, be in more of a mentor capacity? Decided teaching and education. So once I changed my major to education, I mean, the sky's the limit from there. I'm no longer a classroom teacher, but I'm really
Yeah.
thankful that I changed my major. Education is definitely one of the best decisions I ever made.
Yeah. What made you so like introspective, if that's the right word? Like it seems like as you constantly went through these things, you were constantly evaluating and checking in with yourself of like, do I like this? Do I not like this? Does this feel right? Does this not feel right? And I think sometimes we go throughout life and we almost learn to like put that on mute, to like be like, nah, like this is the way I'm supposed to go. But it sounds like as you went through this process and really when these gates were opened, you really started listening to it. But like what made you so kind of like reflective throughout all these processes?
I think part of it is that's the way I've always approached different
Hmm.
challenges in my life. But in this particular moment, I think what it was is I was just struggling so much in college. There was a point where I was considering, like, should I even be in school anymore? I can remember sitting outside of a chemistry lab and I had gotten another F on another lab, and I was literally, negative self-talk just
Yeah.
crept on. I'm dumb, I'm not smart enough. And part of it was just like, wait, no, you are smart enough, you're
Yeah.
academically capable. You have to find something that you're so driven and passionate to do that when you encounter challenge, you're going to push through it. And so when you align your passions and your purpose with the type of impact you want to have in the world and a career, then challenges, you embrace challenges. You don't shy away
Yeah.
from them. And so I think I had to think about, what is it that I would do for free? And I know it's such a cliche question, but I thought
Yeah.
I would mentor all day, every day for free. And what gives me an opportunity to do it? So I think I was thinking more long term about
Yeah.
what could I do and just contribute a ton of energy and time to, and in the face of challenge, still continue to push through. And that was education.
Yeah. And what a beautiful lesson in the sense that like plain and simple, get it, understand it, you're going to have challenges in life. it's part of life, right? Like in anything you do, you're going to hit an obstacle, you're going to hit a speed bump, you're going to hit a challenge, you're going to wake up one day and go, holy crap, I didn't expect that thing that showed up on my door today. Like those moments are always going to happen. But the reflective part that I think is so genius is when that moment comes, looking innately and asking, okay, does that challenge come? And I'm like, let's freaking go. Like bring it on. Like I'm stepping up. This is where I can grow. I can learn more. Or is it a moment of like, oh shit, like here's another thing on my plate, another challenge, another problem, and it's like, if you just look at that alone, that's going to give you such a insider look to,
Mm-hmm.
to understand, like, is this the right path or is it not? And so I guess a question I would have for you is like, let's say someone does that. And for you, it was like realizing that the path was education. So like, let's say someone goes to this moment and they encounter a challenge, or they've encountered a challenge and they're having this moment of like, crap, I'm realizing that like I'm not getting motivated and fired up about these challenges. I'm getting frustrated and annoyed and I'm not liking it. What advice would you have to them on how to kind of like pivot from facing challenges, maybe being assigned that like this isn't what they're supposed to do, to maybe taking it as a moment of, I don't like this, so what's next? What's that next? And I know you work with a lot of people in the college world and in this space. So like, what would be some advice you would give to someone going through that?
The first thing I would tell them is you have to figure out what your why is. Like, why is it important to you? And when I talk to a lot of college students, their initial why is usually around money or a type of lifestyle that they want to live, which those things are important. I don't want any student to discount either of those things, but if it is the primary reason for why you're pursuing a career or pursuing a certain industry or field, a lot of times, at least in my experience, that won't be enough to push you through those the toughest of challenges. And so when you come back to your why, I usually just ask them that question, why, 2 or 3 times. And it usually distills down into, okay, I want to make this amount of money. Why is that important to you? Well, I want to be able to help my family out. Why is that important to you? And then once you get to that 3rd or 4th why, then they usually figure out, well, I want to create this type of lifestyle for myself and help out in this way. And so through asking those series of whys, they can usually get to what is the actual thing that I want to accomplish? What is the actual impact that I want to have? And once you get to the core of your why, like for me, what it was is I never had a teacher that inspired me. Even though I'm from New Orleans, I went to high school in Massachusetts. And so I never had a teacher. And if I'm being frank with you, I went to a predominantly white high school. I didn't have any professors or teachers that looked like me. And so I wanted to be that for Black students. I said, I want to inspire somebody to be great. I want to be able to be a mentor to someone because I've never had a mentor. And that was my why. That was enough to push me through the toughest moments and why I'm still in education today. And so when a student finds out that why that's related to the type of impact they want to have, that's what's going to push them past that moment of frustration. And you're actually going to look at it as an opportunity to grow.
I love it, man. I love it. So for anyone then, if you're listening to this and you're at a road, right, where the heck do I go next? Ask yourself, like right now, like pause the podcast and ask yourself, like, why? Why am I doing this? What's my why? What are my reasons? And ask yourself that 2, 3, 4 times. And I think just like your story, Fred, you're going to get so much clarity on that next direction in your life. So beautiful gift, man. So let's say we go back to your story. You go, I'm going education. You change your degree to education, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so do you graduate and instantly find a job? Kind of what does that process look? Do you email all these schools? Kind of what does that process look like to actually start doing? Because it's one thing to like learn something. It's another thing to be like, okay, I got a degree in this. Now I'm like actually doing it. So many people get a degree and then they don't actually do anything with it. So. Right.
Well, to add to that, it took me 7 years to graduate because when I changed my major, I was going from pre-med to education, and unfortunately, a lot of the credits didn't transfer. So it pushed me back a few years. It ultimately took me 7 years to graduate. I lost my financial aid in year 6, had to drop out and get back in. So definitely one word to
Dang.
everybody is, like you said, there's no better time than now. And even if you're three years in, do it. Do it. It definitely is the one of the best decisions I've made. But fortunate enough, education is one of those fields where they're always looking for teachers. So I was fortunate enough.
Hmm.
I was student teaching at a high school in New Orleans, at Nacar High School, and before the end of my student teaching experience, I was offered a job, and so
Nice.
I was able to teach right after graduation. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that.
Love that. And so then, kind of to go into your education career, you teach for 4 years, right?
4 years. Yep.
And at what point does this like Mr. Entrepreneur come out? Like at what point? Because I know obviously you got Grind to Grad now and some other things you're doing.
Right.
Like at what point does it go, okay, I'm teaching and I like this. I really get to impact people, but I want to kind of create some of my own stuff. Like walk us through where did the inspiration come and then when did the inspiration turn into like action?
Right. So teaching, I taught 4 years, and I love a lot of aspects of teaching. I love the mentoring side. I love creating fun and engaging lessons for students. I love the ability to build relationships with students, but I got burnt out a lot. I hated lesson
Hmm.
planning. I hated giving detention. I hated calling
Yeah.
parents. I was essentially teaching. There was a lot of parts of teaching that I
Yeah.
didn't enjoy, that didn't give me that joy, right? And so I had to really ask myself, is this something I could see myself doing for the rest of my life? Because at one point I had committed to saying, hey, I'm going to be one of those high school teachers that teaches for like 20, 25 years and sees people's children come through. You
Yeah.
probably had
What a
teachers like that.
crazy concept.
Right. And then I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I've gotten a lot from this experience, but this is not how I want to continue. And I started to kind of just look for other avenues to be able to still contribute in the ways that I wanted to, but remove the parts of teaching that I didn't find a ton of joy in. And so I just started looking for academic advisor roles and
Mm.
stumbled upon this college completion advisor role at Collegiate Academies here in New Orleans. And that allowed me to work with students over the course of 3, 4, 5 years while they're in college. I didn't have to be in front of a classroom. I didn't have to lesson plan.
Yeah.
So it allowed me to experience that joy of mentoring and all of those things. And believe it or not, actually, what kind of sparked the entrepreneurial spirit in me, it was kind of while I was teaching, but there was a point in my life where I tried this multi-level marketing
Yeah.
opportunity. I'll just call it that.
Yeah.
And I
I did
wasn't
one of those
successful
back in the day.
back in the day. See,
So
you got
familiar.
me. I tried one of those and it wasn't successful. But what it did spark in me is that wait, you can have an idea and kind of the idea of being an entrepreneur, you can make your ideas come to life.
Yeah.
And so eventually I said, you know what? There are people who are doing what I want to do. And I've always been a fan of Dr. Eric Thomas and Les Brown. And eventually I said, you know what? I should maybe go into public speaking. Maybe that's something I should try. And actually, if I rewind just a little bit, I
Yeah.
actually started off actually trying to do what I was doing in my full-time role, trying to do that on a part-time role, which was providing college access support to high schools and families. I actually tried that out and it didn't take traction. I said, you know what, let me start to do maybe some workshops to kind of just teach college
Right.
students and pre-college students about this. So that's kind of how it evolved over time. I kind of took a few swings at some things and it didn't work out. And eventually
Yeah.
you find what does work.
Yeah. And I think two things that you touched on that I kind of want to dive a little deeper into is like one, like this realization that like there's someone else out there doing the work that lights up your soul. Like, like I think if everybody could just understand that for a second, like if you're at a job and you're saying like I can't wait for the weekend, or if you're doing something and you dread Mondays, or you're doing something and you're not excited when you're actually doing the thing that you're doing 5 days a week, like if you're doing that, what you need to understand alone is that the thing that lights up your soul, someone is doing that in the world somewhere. It's just like you just haven't found it yet. But if you're willing to explore, if you're willing to try to, like you said, try things, fail, do different things, experiment, do all these things, you will eventually find it, right? It's like there's this saying of like teaching humans how to walk. It's like when we first learn to walk, it's not like your baby tries to walk for a few months and eventually go, oh, they're not a walker. It's like, well, no, how long are you going to let the baby walk? Well, until they walk. Okay, boom, that's the magic formula. It's like, how long does it take to figure out what really lights up your soul? Keep doing it until, and you'll find it. And so I think that's just such a beautiful lesson for so many people to learn. And one other thing I want to ask you is, like, throughout your life, whether it was transitioning from pre-med to education, to then being a teacher, to then saying, you know, I've been doing this for years, but this isn't the thing. Like, always allowing yourself to say, like, I'm just gonna drop this and like try something else. I think so many people get stuck in kind of like we were saying earlier, like, I've been doing this, I got to keep going down this route. Like, I'm curious what gave you like the courage, I guess, to say, even though I'm at this job and I'm teaching and it pays me and it puts food on the table for my family and it, you know, we get by, this isn't the thing that lights up my soul. And much easier said than done to say, I'm going to just leave this and go to something else. Like, what gave you the courage to say, I know this doesn't sit right with my soul, and I'm going to do something about it?
Hey, I'm a spiritual person, and I truly believe when you're walking in your purpose, God will create opportunities for you. And I wasn't
Amen.
walking in my purpose. I wasn't truly walking in my purpose as a teacher, right? It was meant for me to experience education as a teacher for a season. And then when that season was done, it was time for me to find something else. I think, honestly, I felt part of it was I felt like I was doing the students a disservice. I felt like I wasn't bringing myself fully or couldn't, because I wasn't walking in my purpose. And I don't like to do anything half-assed. I like to go all in. I really like to, to give my all effort. And it kind of actually brought me back to college, where there's a reason why I'm not studying like I should be. Is because this is not really what drives me. I mean, part of it is I needed to be more disciplined, but I think another huge part of that equation was I'm not passionate enough about this. That's why I'm not giving my all. So I need to transition to something where I'm going to want to give everything. And I think I've always been a person who's willing to take risk.
Yeah.
People, I think sometimes we get paralysis or we're paralyzed by fear. We're paralyzed by needing to know the outcome. And part of it is you just have to throw yourself in it, give your all to it, and then see where the chips fall and make a decision from there. And honestly, take risk, but take opportunity as well. Like, make your own opportunity. So I think I've always been open to taking risks and taking chances and ultimately betting on myself. And I knew, like, I might be leaving the classroom, but something else is going to pop off for me if I continue to put in the work.
Right. Love it. Yeah. And I think for anybody listening to this, it's like, if you're in a phase of your life where you're hearing some of the things Fred and I are talking about, and you're going like, man, I'm like, there's a saying, it says most people die at 25, but they're not buried till they're 75. You know what I mean? And it's like, so many people get stuck in this just like zombie mode. And I would say, like, if you're listening to this and you're in all that zombie mode, like, let this be like, we can't physically shake you, but let this be like the physical us shaking you of like, yo, like, stop doing something that just creates a zombie life for you. Like, step away from it, step out of it. Like, say, just like you did, like, I'm going to figure it out. Like, if you put in the work, just like you said, if you put in the work, like, don't just leave and go sit on your couch for 3 months. That's not the move. but like leave and say, this isn't serving my soul. There's something else out there. I'm gonna put in the work to figure out what that thing is. And even though there may be a step that's calling me, I'm gonna take a step into it, even if I don't know the outcome, right? Like you said, sometimes we get so fixated on, well, what's it gonna look like? Even if you don't know that, like take that step. Let this be the wake up call that like it's time to stop living that zombie life and really like figure out what's that thing that lights up your soul, because it's not going to happen by doing the thing that you've always been doing, expecting one day to wake up and go, oh my God, I do love teaching now. It's like that's not how it works. So one thing I'd be curious, you work with, a lot of students, you work with a lot of people kind of in this phase of trying to figure out their life. And I would be curious, is there like any specific or like regular advice you give to people as you have some of those conversations of like, hey, Fred, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Like, is there any common pieces of advice you go, oh, you're trying to figure out your life, well, X, Y, Z, or anything like that you kind of give people as like a starting point to figuring out the next step?
For sure. Part of it is you got to do the thing you think you're interested in doing. And so part of it is process of elimination. You have to figure out almost what you don't enjoy doing so that you can figure out what does work for you. I think sometimes people maybe, and I did this too, you pigeonhole yourself because you think that the career you want to start off doing is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Right. And every field isn't as clear cut as like teaching or law or medicine. Right. You might say, I want to go into, I'm really into computers. There's so many areas in computer. Yeah. Just anything dealing with tech that you could go into. Yeah. You got to start with a few areas and then do it. And so I know internships are definitely a thing you can do, but sometimes they're competitive. They're hard to get. I would say for sure, shadowing opportunities. If you have an opportunity to shadow someone who's doing what you think you want to do, and then also informational interviews. Ask them not just what's great about their job and what they love. Ask them what they hate about their job. What are the parts that suck? What are the parts that drain energy? Because there are parts of my job that I don't enjoy, but there are tons of parts of my job that do give me energy, that make all the challenging parts worth it and that I want to step up to. So for sure, informational interviews. And then once you experience that, you want to assess, how did I feel when I did that? Was something stirred up in me? Did I feel like, I feel motivated to want to do more? Is the type of impact that I want to have? Or was that boring, right? Was that just like, meh? Right. And so if you feel that, you need to kind of test out different areas. And unfortunately, a lot of students don't take the time to actually immerse themselves in what they think they want to do. They just kind of assume that, yes, this is the thing. Or like you said, they're so far in, they feel like it's too late to turn or shift. And so it's really trying as many things and opportunities as possible. And eventually, even if you start off in point A, opportunities will become available to you where you can kind of take chances and maybe pivot at different points, but you got to try some stuff.
Love it. Absolutely, man. Fred, you just nugget after nugget after nugget out here. I love it, man. So if people want to get more info on you, Fred, see what you're up to, see what your world looks like, and just kind of stay tuned in, where's the best place they can find more info on you?
Y'all can definitely follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Fourth Education, FOURTH Education, all one word, or you can go to fourtheducation.com.
Love it, love it. And so the last question I have for you, it's a question we ask all the guests because we want to help people find direction, but we want to do it through like action, not just, again, go sit on your couch for 3 months. So the question I would have for you is, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
I would definitely say the one thing I want you to do is decide, and this is something that I've had to embrace even more. You have to fight mentally, but you have to pick something in your life that inspires you, but also that is going to make you uncomfortable. Because it's easy to do the things that will make you comfortable and make you feel at ease and make you feel secure. but there's something in your life that motivates you, that inspires you, that you wanna have a certain impact. But I want you to choose the aspect of that is most uncomfortable for you, and I want you to dive right in. So that could be saying, you know what, there's this person I follow on Instagram, and I really want to interview them, but I'm afraid that they won't answer. Go do that thing. Or
Yeah.
there's a job you wanted to apply for and you may be doubting yourself. Go and apply for it. So you got to choose discomfort in order to grow. And I would say choose it in an area that inspires you, and then start to form that habit of saying, I'm a little bit afraid, but you know what? I'm gonna put 10 toes down and run right to it.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Fred, man, it has been an absolute honor to have you on the podcast again. Thank you for joining us here today, man. Massively, massively appreciate your time. And thanks so much for being here with us, brother.
Thank you, Stu. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.